Evening folks, it's Kev here from Inspiring Games, and this evening I am going to try and create a combat video for you using the new combat aid to try and show how it works. I know we've launched it recently and there's been a number of questions, so hopefully a video will make for some easy viewing and will help you guys get your head around the intent behind it. Specifically in this video, I'm looking at a hero combination that's been put together, a request from one of our backers, Kevin, a different Kevin, not me. Hi Kevin. So let's see if we can do this. And now Kevin did give us a specific request in terms of a combat that he had tried out and wanted to understand how that would have worked out at the end. I will do that one, but for now I'm going to do, this is actually an unscripted combat, so I'm just going to go with the flow here and show you how it would work. So first thing I'm going to do, just quickly introduce the characters to you. These are the farmhand, student, and forge hand as built by Kevin. They look fairly, fairly solid standard builds used in the cave set with a particular specialism for the mage. So no problem. What we're going to do first of all then is grab our combat aid here that we've given you all to try out as on a print and play basis, and you'll note that I've put the outnumbered token here on this part of the foe. Now I'm on the melee foe here. I've jumped ahead. In this particular case, what happened was that the foe involved was the Goblin Drunks. So I'm going to take the Goblin Drunks, and let's assume that we are not going to run away. Okay, that because obviously we want it to actually show you how the combat is going to work. So the fact that we're not running away, we still need to roll for surprise against this, and let's assume that we have. We have no modifiers for the exit that we've chosen or anything like that. So let's first of all, just before we even get to the combat aid, let's just check what our surprise is going to be. And we are on a 5, 10, 12 against a surprise rating of 7. So if everybody's following that, 5, 10, 12 with no modifiers versus the 7 here, means that we are more than 4 higher. So 4 or more higher means that the heroes have surprise. So important to point there, as I say, this is unscripted. I'm not changing the dice. We actually have surprise, and right now we could choose to retreat from this combat. So if we were heavily wounded here, or it was not important to the victory conditions of the RPG, or you were playing a freeform RPG, then it is perfectly acceptable to run away and fight another day. It would cost you 1 time, and you would basically leave the foe in the room and not fight it. But in this occasion, we have surprise because we beat it by 4 and we're going to fight the foe. So the first thing we do with the new combat aid is establish whether it is melee or ranged. Okay, so you can see our board here. Clearly I'm on the melee side. Here's the range side, but we want to use the melee side. So, as it says, step 1, place card here. So that is where we're going to place our foe card. Okay. Next thing we need to do is establish how many creatures there are going to be. So we know there are 3 heroes. 1, 2, 3. So we look for 3 people here. 3. Okay, so there are 3 Goblin Drunks, and they will fight to the bitter end. The 0 being that they won't run away. So there are 3 Goblin Drunks. So the next thing we need to do is grab some tokens that we've given you in the print and play. Okay, that wasn't so clever, Kev. Mix them all together. Hey ho. You can see this is totally unscripted, folks. So let me just take the farmhand there, the forge hand. That's 1 goblin, 2 goblins, 3 goblins. Okay, who start off in the melee section. Okay, Now they are not ranged creatures, so we do not give them disadvantage tokens, okay? Because they only act in a passive manner. They are melee, so the advantage and disadvantage tokens are only relevant for those that are active participants. So the next thing we're going to do is establish what stance the heroes are going to take. So please note, in the engagement round, nobody pins any. Pinning is a new term that we've come up with, but all it basically means is that you're locking people into combat. So in this case, we're seeing it from the hero's perspective, but a melee foe wants to lock any ranged heroes into combat. Whereas if it's the other way around, if it's a ranged foe, a melee hero would want to lock it into combat. The key point here just now that we're trying to get across on the aid, because it does cause some confusion here. If you notice this part here, in the engagement rounds, melee heroes do not pin creatures, okay? So if you want to, everybody could be ranged in the engagement round. Engagement rounds is your opportunity for everybody to shoot if that's what they want to be, what they want to do. So in this case, we're just going to select attacks. Okay, our farmhand has got a worn axe. He could throw it, but then all he would have left is his trusty knife. So I don't quite fancy that one. And the other combat abilities that we have are really just to do with the flesh wound, or it may come in later, just a scratch here. So our farmhand is most definitely going to go into melee. Okay, so he is going to go here. Now the student has a bow, has multiple options here. Okay, only usable in the engagement round. You may make an additional ranged attack with your bow this round. Pretty good. Or I can use one of my spells. I am in fact going to use opening volley because I can use it in the engagement round, and I know I've got advantage as well. I'm going to place that token in a second. Okay, so in the ranged hero section, and then finally the forge hand. The forge hand has got one spear that can be thrown irrespective of any talents I've got. Other than that, I have Blade Singer, which is an excellent ability for MD to use, particularly because it's a PAR, a play after you roll. If you see this exclamation mark in the rhombus or in the die, that means you play it after you roll. Very, very powerful ability, this. So I think that the Forge Hand is purely going to make a normal attack with the spear. That's what I'm going to do here. So the Forge Hand will go into melee. So what I'm going to do now is just, you'll note I don't, in the new proposed tokens for the combat aid, we hard code 1 health onto each token already. So each of these drunks has already got 1 health here on them. So we don't need to place any additional ones unless they have more than 1 health. This is to speed it up for you, okay? So I'm not going to collect any health tokens, I'm just going to add some advantage tokens here just now from my pile. And I'm going to, there we go. 2, 3. I thought I was going to have to stop there for a second, but I couldn't see my own tokens. So we have advantage, we have advantage, and we have advantage. Okay, I'm going to pause there for a second. Okay, so I'm now going to move. You'll note on the guide, we don't do part 1 at the moment because we're in the engagement round. So part 2, ranged attack roll, resolved heroes attack. So that means that our student with her bow and the opening volley ability of the quick draw talent is going to have a shot, and probably the other 2 melee heroes are as we say in the business, breaking it, that they're going to be shot, but that's what's going to happen. So the student is going to take 3d6 and roll. For an exciting 379, there is, whenever you're doing this, you do need to look up any modifiers against as a range target. There is no range modifier here, so we're on a 9, and we get the +2 for advantage. That was because we started off with surprise. So we get an 11, and an 11 gives us this advance token here, not token, sorry, advance result, which means it's a +2 on the next attack to go. But we've already got that +2 here anyway, so in this particular case it doesn't make any difference. However, because we're using this ability, and you'll note that this ability here is an exhaust, it's not a drain where you flip the card over, it's an exhaust. I am going to turn that this way, because we've now exhausted ourselves to use this ability. We get to use our second attack. So, with a +2 again, we get a 3, 6, 9, and 11. In this case, it is an advance. Now, an advance again, sorry. Now, that would be useful if we didn't all start with surprise, okay? Because that would add a +2 to the next hero to go, or if we were fighting a ranged creature, they would have a -2 in their next attack. In this case, that is an irrelevance. I'm going to take this token away because it's been used, because we've already got the +2. But I just want to illustrate out how that would work. As I say, it's a non-scripted combat. So the next person to attack is not the creatures. As I say, please bear in mind these are melee, so they don't attack. It's dealt with within the combat results table on the various weapons. So what we should be aware of, however, melee heroes may attack any creature in combat, not just those we've pinned. We're not pinning at the moment. If at any time there are more creatures than melee heroes, all melee heroes are outnumbered. You'll see that is in fact the case. There are 3 here against 2 heroes, and this is still relevant in the engagement round. This is a rule that quite often people they forget or aren't aware of, and therefore we're creating this token to make it clear. You just lift this up and put it over there. Okay, so you've got an additional -1 because you're outnumbered. And it's deliberately the case. As I say, these are passive creatures, but them having that additional -1 means you're more likely to be hit by them. So, I'm now going to proceed to do a farmhand who's not going to do a mighty throw, and he's already got advantage, so there's no need for him to use this ability at this stage. Let's save that for another time. So he's just going to make a base attack. 6, 10, 13. Now, here's the bit where we're hoping the combat aid will help. Okay, so we've got a 13. You'll note these guys are drunk, so you get whatever you do, you get a +1 here, okay? So 14. Which is cancelled out by the outnumbering. We're back to 13. Finally, he has a +2 from the surprise, from the advantage, to get a 15. So just so everybody's clear, I know not everybody loves the maths, okay? But 13 plus 1 is 14. -1 for outnumbering is 13. Plus 2 gives us a 15. And the key bit that people often get wrong here is it's not against the knife, it's against the weapon that he's using, because the combat track on the axe is much better than the knife. Specifically, you'll note a key illustration here. Okay, a 15 with the axe is a crit, whereas it is only a strike with the knife. And if we didn't have that +2, and we'd got a 13, so if we didn't have the surprise and we'd got a 13, it still would have been a strike with the axe, but not with the knife. So please don't make life harder for yourself. Always remember to use the weapon if you're using that. The knife is there as a backup, or for those that really like taking skill talents and ranged weapons. So in this case we have a crit, which causes 1 damage. Okay, so we are going to I'm just checking I have no clever abilities to change a crit into something else, which I don't. So we are going to kill one creature here because they have all 1 health, okay? So we have 1 health here, dead. Ah! Etc. Lots of sound effects. Please note the special ability here. For each 2 creatures that die, increase the damage the goblin drunks deal in combat by +1 as they get really angry and rowdy. And that's pretty bad, because if even on a trade blows you would take 2 damage. So in this case that doesn't apply yet, because we've only killed 1. And also, again, another reason for the combat aid. Firstly, I'm going to take that away, because that character has now acted. The second point I want to point out is that a crit adds advantage. It does the strike and adds advantage to the next hero to go. Again, we've already got it, so it doesn't stack. So in this case, it makes no odds. But please be aware that that is a big deal when the chips are down and you're in a bad place on a fight, or perhaps outnumbered and fighting things on your own. So in this case, the Forge Hand has still got to go. And dynamically, what we want to show you here is that this token now goes back over here again, because we are not outnumbered, okay? Hopefully everybody followed that one. Again, it's another reason for the combat aid and the token itself. It's just to make it easier to track, because what we want you doing is having fun in the combats, not spending forever trying to remember rules. So, as I say, the creatures don't need to act. We now need the Forge Hand to make her attack. Okay, they are not outnumbered. This is meant to be a whirling melee, so she will make an attack with a +2, and we're just going to use our standard spear attack here as well. So I'm going to take those dice, roll, and we're very much in the ballpark. Everything's in the bell curve this evening so far. So 4, 8, 9, and if you can remember, we get a +1 for it being melee is against a +1 against this particular foe. Sorry, in melee. So that's a 9 + 1 is 10. There is no outnumbering anymore, thanks to our farmhand, and a +2 for the advantage, which gets us to 12. A 12 on a rough spear gives us advantage. So this is important because, and I'm just checking if I can do anything with that. Sometimes you can take an advantage and place it into something else, but I can't. So in this case, this comes away because I've made my attack. However, I now get to give that to the next hero to act. So in the next turn, it's going to be whoever goes first, and we now need to get into pinning. So that is the end of the engagement round. We would quickly check morale. If you remember, we said that the creatures will only flee when they get to 0 because they're drunk. I mean, look at that. That looks amazing. Whatever it is, mushroom Guinness, I guess. But they will run away. They will not run away at all. So they will fight to the death. The creatures again can choose. The heroes can choose to retreat. Again, this is something that people quite often forget in Legends Untold, but it's not meant to be a complete murder hobo fest. It is perfectly acceptable to run away in Legends Untold. If you are struggling, which we're not in this particular case, then please spend the time, run away, and fight another day. In this case, however, the heroes decide to continue with the combat because it's fairly evident that they have the upper hand against these drunken goblins just now. So I'm now going to move into a combat round. It's round 2 of combat, but just so that the rules are clear, engagement round is the first round where you've got all the fancy things regarding people being able to shoot and not pinning and so forth. After that, everything is a standard combat round. And at this point, you can just follow the combat aid here to keep yourself right in case you're getting stuck. So number 1, okay, because the engagement round part, this is now irrelevant. Yeah. Number 1, melee heroes each pin. I guess you could even do that, so you don't read it anymore. If that helps, that's an idea. I'll give that one a bit of thought. It just came to me as I'm recording. But melee heroes each pin 1 or 2 different creatures. All creatures must be pinned. To be clear, the words that what we're trying to achieve here is that basically I could choose now. Now my farmhand has no ranged attacks whatsoever, so he cannot choose to be ranged. Okay, you can't do that. You can't just sit back and do nothing. So the farmer is going to be melee, but that farmer could pin both of those, okay, on his own. That would be acceptable and permissible within the rules. He would have to fight them with the -1. And this is where it gets a bit tactical. So the Forge Hand could choose to move back to ranged, okay, because if the Forge Hand was really struggling for health, like let's say she'd lost lots of health and we were worried about protecting her, then she could, or maybe she had the upgraded spear and had 2 ammunition, she could choose to go back to ranged and throw that spear in the hope of killing one before melee happened, okay? And that's totally acceptable. So that's what we mean by 1 or 2 different heroes, and this is against a melee foe. So please bear in mind this is not for ranged foes, against a melee foe. But I just really wanted to illustrate that is a possibility. In this case, I'm not overly worried about the Forge Hand at the moment. And in addition, she has got full health and only 1 spear, and I don't trust my dice roll to hold out on a knife tonight. So the Forge Hand is actually going to remain in melee beside her friend the Farmhand. All hands together, boom. And we are going to begin the combat anew. So we've done pinning, okay. The 1 would have been enough, but 2 in fact are choosing to stay in, so each one is pinning 1 effectively, okay. And we're now going to go to step 2, ranged attack roll resolves hero attack. So if you remember, the Forge Hand did actually pass over an advantage, so that advantage is going to go to the student here, and the student is actually going to do many fists, primarily because I think it'd be cool to try out this, cool to show off the spell. A shot with advantage on the bow would be reasonable against the drunks as well, but in this case that's what we're going to do. So totting this up, this is one where Kevin's chosen specialisation as a Mage of Doom has worked out very well, because you count up the number of speciality icons you have, a number of specialisms. So you can see 1, 2, 3 in this case, so maxed out, okay. So you will gain +3 to the roll on the Many Fist spell, in addition to the +2 that has been passed over. So at the moment we're on a +5, and there is no range modifier against the drunks, because even though they're in the middle of a combat, they're still drunk. So I'm going to take my dice and roll with a +5. Okay, 5, 10, 15 +5 is 20. 20 is an awesome score. You'll note though you cannot crit with this spell. Okay, only a strike. So in this case we will now exhaust that. It was an exhaust ability, and take away this token and kill one of these drunks. So if you remember earlier on, that tactic may have worked by keeping the Forge Hand back, because there is only 1 left now and wouldn't outnumber the heroes in any event. But that is what's happened. We've killed 1, and we do need to remember the special rule here now, that for each 2 creatures that die, we've now on to the, look at that face, look at the anger in that face. We've now not got a merry drunk, we've got an angry drunk who's going to do 2 damage. So I'm going to move on to melee at this point, and the Forge Hand is just going to take a normal attack with a spear, because I quite fancy my chances of using Blade Singer here as well. Okay, I do love that ability. So it's there is no, this doesn't come into play. Okay, and in case you're wondering, the heroes can't outnumber the foes, and that's deliberately because in some ways you could argue that some of the things are stacked in the favour of the heroes as it is. So we have thought about it, and we've deliberately not let the heroes outnumber the foes. Certainly not just now. Who knows? Maybe for boss foes in a later version of Legends Untold, but not just now. Not in the core rules. So the Forge Hand is going to take those 3 dice and roll. And we're on an 11. Again, a fairly straightforward roll. 11. If you can follow the maths on me, we get a +1 here. Makes it a 12. But no other modifiers here. So a 12 with the Ross Spear is an advance. Okay. I have no PAR abilities to change. I didn't get my strike, so I can't use Blade Singer. And I don't have anything else that lets me move that on. So let's assume that thematically speaking, the Forge Hand has forced us back, and the Forge Hand is now going to attack with a +2. Go Forge Hand. So the Forge Hand, there's no point in doing the openers, and I'm not doing a mighty throw. So it is basically a straightforward attack again. And we are on, it's a 14, okay, 6, 11, 14, and in addition to that, we get a 1 makes it a 15 here, and a 17, which is clearly a crit on the axe, and a killing crit at that. One thing I would want to show you here, because people do sometimes get caught up with it, I wasn't sure if it would turn up here. If I had scored a trade blows, okay, a trade blows here, which is bang in the middle. So if we've not got any advantages, that's your most likely result typically. Then in this case, the farmhand would have inflicted 1 damage and killed that creature, which we've done either way, okay. But in addition to that, because of the special rule here, that creature would, with its dying breath, cause 2 wounds back on the farmhand, okay. 2 wounds back, which is pretty brutal, and that's one of the reasons why you always have to take your go with a melee character until you get to the end of the combat. So even if these creatures had been like a 3-1 and they would break with 1 creature left, so if let's say it was a 3-1 and we got to there, then we know they're going to run away at the end of the combat. The farmhand must act because it is the creature's way of causing damage back again via either a trade blows or indeed a fail. Okay, they are passive creatures, and therefore, or passive combatants, I suppose, and therefore that is why you must take your action. Okay, so in this case, we've killed them all. Go heroes. That's been a particularly successful combat. We basically exhausted 2 and killed 3 goblin drunks, and our archer never hurt anybody in melee combat, which is kind of unheard of. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the specific details of the combat that Kevin was asking for help on. So just to explain this, the heroes are, as outlined by Kevin, it's against the goblin drunks. He tells me that if I've got this right, that the farmhand and the forge hand were unconscious at this point. So I'm going to flip all these over and grab myself 2 unconscious tokens. Okay, so that's going to grab those. 1, 2. Okay, so effectively, you have to bear with us on this one. Okay, I know it feels like the students dragging these two characters around. Let's worry about the backstory in a bit. But mechanically speaking, these 2 heroes are not in this combat at the moment. They are unconscious. So with surprise, so Kevin would have rolled 4 or higher than the 7, so an 11 or higher, which is pretty straightforward, not an exceptionally difficult thing to do against the goblin drunks because they are drunk. Unless it was specific to the scenario, if it was me, I would simply spend the time and run away with the other two heroes. So I wouldn't do that combat. I would retreat to the previous location and spend that one time. But I've explained that to Kevin on Facebook. More importantly, he wants to understand how a round of combat would actually play through if he did fight. And sometimes you do need to fight to win a scenario. This could be like the last foe you've got to fight and you've got no time left or something like that. So in this case, what would happen is we would place the 3 tokens, because there are 3 heroes. You don't place one, and we know they're melee, so we've done this before. Okay, technically we are in the engagement round, so let's not cover this with my concept idea here. And we don't. We can do what we want with the student in the engagement round. It's really important to illustrate this one. Okay, even though there is only one hero, we can still go ranged for 1 turn for the engagement round only. So I'm going to do that because Kevin wanted to fight this one through. Okay, so I'm going to go ranged, and although I'm actually tempted to use one of the spells, I'm more tempted to try and get my 2 shots off again with the quick draw. So in this occasion, I am going to use quick draw because I know that after this round, I'm going to have to go into melee at that point, and so I need to try and be lucky here and whittle 2 down. I mean, I've explained this to Kevin. It's highly likely I'm going to lose here, but you know, us Kevins need to stick together. I'm sure my mum said that at some point. So let's try and shoot them down with the bow, and then heroically take them on with my knife. I'm just checking if there's anything else I can do. Oh, I could put a candle in their face. That's not going to help me. I could read to them, or I can. Yeah, I can't do anything else. So it's let's see what happens. Wish me luck, guys. Right. So I do have advantage though. Okay, I do have advantage because if you remember, we've got surprise. So come on, let's get a good dice roll. So what do we get? Oh, there we go. 6, 11, 14. So 14 plus nothing for being ranged. Okay, so 14 plus my 2 for the surprise is a 16, which, even with the rough bow, this shoddy old bow here, is a crit. Okay, so that okay, so I'm going to move on to the specific details of the combat that Kevin was asking for help on. So just to explain this, the heroes are, as outlined by Kevin, it's against the goblin drunks. He tells me that if I've got this right, that the farmhand and the forge hand were unconscious at this point. So I'm going to flip all these over and grab myself 2 unconscious tokens. Okay, so that's going to grab those. 1, 2. Okay, so effectively, you have to bear with us on this one. Okay, I know it feels like the students dragging these two characters around. Let's worry about the backstory in a bit. But mechanically speaking, these 2 heroes are not in this combat at the moment. They are unconscious. So with surprise, so Kevin would have rolled 4 or higher than the 7, so an 11 or higher, which is pretty straightforward, not an exceptionally difficult thing to do against the goblin drunks because they are drunk. Unless it was specific to the scenario, if it was me, I would simply spend the time and run away with the other 2 heroes. So I wouldn't do that combat. I would retreat to the previous location and spend that one time. But I've explained that to Kevin on Facebook. More importantly, he wants to understand how a round of combat would actually play through if he did fight. And sometimes you do need to fight to win a scenario. This could be like the last foe you've got to fight, and you've got no time left or something like that. So in this case, what would happen is we would place the 3 tokens, because there are 3 heroes. You don't place 1, and we know they're melee, so we've done this before. Okay, technically we are in the engagement round, so let's not cover this with my concept idea here. And we don't we can do what we want with the student in the engagement round. It's really important to illustrate this one. Okay, even though there is only 1 hero, we can still go ranged for 1 turn for the engagement round only. So I'm going to do that because Kevin wanted to fight this one through. Okay, so I'm going to go ranged, and although I'm actually tempted to use one of the spells, I'm more tempted to try and get my 2 shots off again with the quick draw. So in this occasion, I am going to use quick draw because I know that after this round, I'm going to have to go into melee at that point, and so I need to try and be lucky here and whittle 2 down. I mean, I've explained this to Kevin. It's highly likely I'm going to lose here, but you know, us Kevins need to stick together. I'm sure my mum said that at some point. So let's let's try and shoot them down with the bow, and then heroically take them on with my knife. I'm just checking if there's anything else I can do. Oh, I could put a candle in their face. That's not going to help me. I could read to them, or I can. Yeah, I can't do anything else. So it's let's see what happens. Wish me luck, guys. Right. So I do have advantage though. Okay, I do have advantage because if you remember, we've got surprise. So come on, let's get a good dice roll. So what do we get? Oh, there we go. 6, 11, 14. Plus 0 for the range. Plus 2 is a 16, which even on the rough bow is a crit, which is fantastic. But also, please bear in mind, we're using an open volley as well. So you get to make an additional ranged attack. So we've killed 1, and I get to make a second attack here with advantage. Okay, with advantage. 5, 10, 11. 5, 10, 11 plus 0 plus 2 is a 13 for another strike. So that kills both of them, and I lose the advantage token. So we now have 1 left. Go archery. Go archery. Okay, we can do this. We now have 1 Goblin Drunk left who is enraged. They're going to cause 2 damage, which is not going to be good for our poor student. But it will not run away because it needs to get to 0. So it's not going to flee. We could choose to flee. We could spend the time. But again, for the purposes of this illustration, let's assume we don't have the time to do that. So we are going to proceed on with our trusty knife. Why am I mentioning the knife? Because we now, I'm going to drag this down. We now have to go to step 1. Melee heroes each pin 1. All creatures must be pinned. This is us basically saying that this thing has now run towards you in a drunken stupor, and you must fight it in melee. We don't get a choice. Okay, I only got to shoot in the engagement round. We don't get a choice here. So I have to go into melee, which means my bow is now useless. Okay, and these lovely spells, you'll note it says use as a ranged attack, use as a ranged attack. So again, they're useless as well. So I have no option but to fight with my knife, and I must fight it because it's a passive participant. It's the only way to actually, for it to strike me. I don't need to put in the outnumbering because these creatures here have already been killed. Kevin did ask what would have happened if he had not killed any, as in my archery had sucked. Then basically it's exactly the same step as this, but you put that in there. Okay, so you would make this attack, but with the additional -1. Okay, But we don't need to worry about that just now because I've done this. And I'm going to make a basic knife attack with it here. So it's just this track here. There's no modifier here. There's no modifier for surprise running. It's only the +1 because they're drunk. But remember, these guys do 2 damage. So I'm going to take this here, give it a roll. Guess I've been reasonable tonight so far. 6, 11, 12. Plus the 1 here is 13. Remember, however, I'm using a knife, which sucks. So that is not going to give me a strike. Okay, it doesn't kill it. And this is where the combat track does what it's supposed to do in combat. If you get in the middle, you're both going to start hurting one another. If you go to the kind of beneficial side of that track, you should start helping yourself to kill it. And if you go the other way, it will start to kill you. Okay, and depending on your dice rolls. What I mean by that is the hero, assuming that I'm not going to retreat, which I'm not going to, then the hero now starts the next round with a +2, and I'm going to make a knife attack again because I have no other talents to use, so it has to be. But bear in mind the knife sucks. So 5, 10, 12 plus 1 is 13. 5, 10, 12 plus 1 is 13 plus 2 here is 15. It's not a scripted combat at all, folks, so I'm just taking the dice as they land. In this case, 14 is a strike, which will kill the goblin. And the moral of that story is thus: 1, never mess with a student with a bow and a knife, and 2, us Kevins need to stick together. I hope that helps, folks. Thanks very much for watching. I had a lot of fun. Really appreciate your time. Thanks again. Good night.